I'm going to talk to you about amateur radio and its involvement in disaster communications. That's what we're here to talk about this morning. My name, by the way, is Jeff Clark. I'm with the Kanawha County Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management. Been there almost 10 years. Quick little resume. I've been a licensed ham operator for 32 years. Are there any other hams in the room? Great. A couple of you. I was the county emergency coordinator for amateur radio for 10 years, co-founder of our local group called CARES. Former president of the Kanawha Amateur Radio Club. I'm the co-coordinator for the county's involvement in the system that Alan's going to talk about. And I also happen to be the board chair for West Virginia Canine Search and Rescue. My call sign for anybody who cares is K8JAC. I don't care if it's a training exercise, a drill, or an actual disaster, an incident. Communications issues always float to the top. When you hot wash these drills, training exercises, hot wash any disaster incident, it floats right to the top. The communications problems and issues. And it's not just a Kanawha County thing or a West Virginia thing. Go ask the 9/11 responders and the people involved in the Hurricane Katrina response. There were multitudes of communications issues that surrounded those for somewhat different reasons. Why does that happen? Public safety radio systems are designed for day-to-day use. They're not designed to be stressed, and frankly, local governments can't afford to maintain the communications infrastructure to support the occasional disaster. The 911 center can't afford to load up on dispatchers who sit there and twiddle their thumbs waiting for bad stuff to happen. Our public safety agencies don't have the money nor the desire to build a communications infrastructure that can handle any extreme response. That's not so unusual. Did you realize that the public switched telephone network, Frontier, is only designed to handle somewhere on the order of between 15 and 30% of the population dialing a call at the exact same moment. If we were able to organize the nearly 200,000 people that live in Kanawha County and say, you know, at exactly 11 o'clock on Saturday morning, I want you to pick up your phone and make a telephone call, you would crash the telephone network. And it did happen. Remember when? 9/11. It happened up there on 9/11, it certainly did.
I remember something here in the county that did that. It was a chemical incident, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That's happened quite frequently in Wood County here lately also. Our 911 center has actually went down to date at least 5 times just within the last 6 months. The actual primary 911 lines have actually went out. So it's been pretty traumatic. I mean, they've actually had to end up dispatching our agencies and everything up there. Just start taking calls as they come in to their firehouses.
That's happened here too. It happened during the derecho twice.
Yeah.
In the aftermath of the derecho. August 28, 2008, the Bear Crop Science plant explodes down here. And the telephone system went down, crashed. Because of the amount of people making phone calls and because our 911 center making reverse 911 phone calls at the rate of 300 a minute out to warn the public, brought down the local telephone network. Do you have a question?
No, I was going to make a comment. It was Governor Rockefeller announced that the blizzard was coming. It took the phone system down pretty much across the state.
Wow, that was a hell of a storm too, wasn't it?
Yeah, sunshine.
As a result of this, as we just discussed and we all realize, communications networks quickly become strained during a disaster incident. And also our public safety agencies, by design, don't have the inherent ability to talk to each other. That just got better with the system that Alan's going to talk about, but that has been the rule for forever and ever. Oftentimes these communication systems aren't hardened or redundant. We have a suburban police department whose repeater is housed in a building that's not even locked, and it sits up in the middle of a muddy field. And I don't think they've still don't think they've put a lock on it.
That's not Charleston, it's someone else.
That's right. It's one of our suburban departments.
Don't give them any ideas to take our tower out today and then go commit a crime. But,
Systems that aren't designed to withstand 90-mile-an-hour winds that we got in Kanawha County out of the derecho. Things like that. And here's a key point. Most public safety professionals are not radio savvy, not technically savvy, and are not trained communicators. Unless you're a trooper, when you go to the police academy, they're not going to train you to use radios. They're not going to train you in protocol, discipline, blah, 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 blah. And with the hundreds of volunteer firefighters we have in Kanawha County, same deal. They're not trained to use a radio. They just hand you a radio, here you go, have fun with it. So a ham operator is going to fix this. The quote, I'm sure, has been said at some point in history from a government leader, because yes, quite frankly, for quite a long time, ham operators have come to the rescue with communication skills during disaster. Ham operators have facilitated communications for not only disasters but public safety or public service events practically since it was invented back in the time of Marconi. So who are these pocket protector wearing weirdos? Where do they come from, and do they walk on water? Little name dropping here, and the first one I like to mention is my buddy Joe Walsh of the Eagles. I think a lot of Joe, particularly since he's sobered up, and once again, Joe is a very active amateur radio operator. Some of these people, of course, are no longer operating. Chet Atkins being one of them. Ronnie Millsap's still around, of course, and so is Patty Loveless, Walter Cronkite, Earl Ives, Barry Goldwater, the senator from Arizona, who ran for president back in '64, I think. Priscilla Presley, thank you very much. Marlon Brando, Jim Croce, King Hussein of Jordan was a very active ham operator. Arthur Godfrey, George Pataki, the former governor of New York. And those of you from Kanawha County recognize the next name. He needs no introduction. President of our county commission. Dr. Steve Arts, many of you know him. He's in nuclear medicine, CAMC. And I don't know who that guy is there at the end. We need to fill the space. What is ham radio? It's a worldwide fraternity of men, women, boys, and girls who practice in the art of technology development and communication both locally and globally. Ham radios are indeed goodwill ambassadors. Sit down a radio and dial around, listen to people talking to people in foreign countries. It's a friendly conversation. Those of you that are familiar with CB radio know what a cesspool it is. Ham radio communications are a stark contrast to that. You don't hear foul language. It is a self-policing organization. Government licensed and regulated anywhere in the world. It's all pretty much the same. So hams versus the public safety radio user. First of all, ham operators are trained. You have to pass a test in order to receive a license. They have a technical understanding of the equipment they're using and how to use it properly. That radio that I bring to your disaster is my radio, and I'm quite familiar with it. I know what every button does. I know how to make it do what I want and need it to do. You can get the message through when nothing else works by ham radio. And if we can't do it by voice, we'll do it by dits and dahs. That still works, and it works when nothing else does. During Katrina, we took our mobile command post and went to Gretna, across the river from downtown New Orleans, and set up for a week. went with our Sheriff's Department's bomb squad and SWAT team. And because of the sunspot cycle, and I hear a bunch of you going, oh no, he's going to talk about sunspots. Being at a nadir, a very low point in the cycle, the lowest point that it's been in modern history. Ham radio communications back to West Virginia were useless. I tried everything in the world to communicate with some folks up here. We barely heard each other once, but not enough to facilitate a conversation. Hams have their own message transport protocol, their national traffic system. You can pass a message anywhere in the world, the same message. You've heard the old adage, I could tell Alan a story and he could tell you, and you could pass it around the room, and by the time it gets back up here, it's an entirely different story, right? No, the message gets passed exactly as it's transmitted, including a checksum system, so that the same number of words are present in the message from the time it originates to the time it arrives at its destination. That's been around forever and ever, and they still use it. But I have a cell phone. What do I need ham radio for? Sir?
Such as in a natural disaster, all towers would probably be down, and there is a possible chance that if you had a generator, you could plug in your ham radio and call in for help.
Yeah, brilliant observation. Either down because of a storm or overloaded. They're going to overload faster than a public switch telephone network does. Overloaded is a big problem, and again, let's talk about 9/11. Talk to the people, the several million people in Manhattan who are all trying to use their cell phones at the same instant. Cell phones just simply cannot be relied upon, and I apologize for anybody in this room who might work for Verizon or AT&T. I don't mean to disparage you, but they'll quickly go away. In emergency management, we have an issue because that's when we need to be able to use our phones. And I've never had a chance to try it yet, but we have what's called the Wireless Priority System, WPS, that allows us to gain access when we need to. I haven't tried it, but. So, no, cell phones are not the solution in a disaster. So what's this all mean to me? CERT teams more and more are loading themselves up with ham operators. Some CERT teams are just ham operators. CERT's with a communication specialty. But this is an opportunity for those of you who belong to CERT teams to be able to coordinate your own operation. CERT teams, you know, if you go back and look at the original video that came out when CERT training started, and you see this team deploying through this neighborhood. They don't have any method of keeping in touch with each other. What if one of them gets in a jam? Or one team, you know, gets in a jam, gets into a house, they don't realize it, but it's unsafe, and the place starts to collapse on them. Where are they going to find help? The smart emergency manager, there's a few of you in this room, has a team of trained ham operators in their back pocket. We do here. And we're pretty well supported, and yes, part of that is due to the fact the president of our county commission is a ham operator, but our 911 center has a very nice ham station within it. Our local group has been involved in EOC operations here for, good gosh, a long time, a couple of decades at least. So what do we do with them? Well, locally we've used them for communication between shelters and the EOC, and that's turned out to be very successful because it helps with rumor control. It helps with disorganization at the shelter level, which happens, and it helps with resource deployment. Shelters need resources, food, water, cots, blankets, etc., etc. So that helps take some of the traffic out of the 911 center, puts it on ham radio where the messages get passed efficiently to the EOC. Supplemental on-scene communication, weather spotters. You'll find them more prevalent in, well, even across Ohio. Ohio is a very nice network of weather spotters that follow the system across the state and hand off from county to county. It's very well organized, and they coordinate and provide that information to the Weather Service. Our Weather Service office here has a ham station in it. It's been a real struggle to get, ham radio groups are like any other nonprofit organization. They don't have the time and or the motivation to commit to a lot of training and so forth. So we've had a heck of a time setting up a reliable weather spotter network up here. You can get on the air and ask for rain gauge reports, and all you get back is, well, it was raining 20 minutes ago here, but it ain't now. Well, thank you. I think we knew that, but it's been a struggle to do that. But in other places, it works out quite well. An example schematically of how this might work: you have a trained weather spotter who spies a funnel cloud, reports it to his net control operator, who then reports it to the county EOC and the Weather Service, all in one fell swoop. And the Weather Service historically has relied heavily on ham operators for their ground truth, what they can't see on radar. RAAS and RAAS, these are the two organizations of ham operators who specialize in radio communications, and we'll talk about RAAS first. RAAS is codified under federal law. It is administered under FEMA. It stands for the Radio Amateur Civil Emergency Service, and it was a Cold War era invention. There are some strings attached to RAAS that have been, and those strings have been somewhat loosened over the years, but the original concept was that when RAAS became operational, everybody else stayed off the air or in listen mode without talking. RAAS operators back then had specific frequencies that they operated on. But RAAS operations are pretty much restricted to federally declared disasters, period, and nothing else. Problem with that is, in order to maintain a pool of trained emergency communicators, you need, just like any other emergency responder, you got to train, right? You got to practice your skills, and RAAS doesn't provide for that. So the American Radio Relay League, which is the national fraternal organization for ham operators in the United States, started RAAS, the Amateur Radio Emergency Service. Nowadays, a lot of RAAS groups are also RAAS groups. In RAAS, the state radio officer is appointed by state emergency management. The county level radio officer is appointed by county emergency management. In our area, the RAAS radio officer at the local level is also the RAAS emergency communications coordinator for the county. So it's one group, RAAS/RAAS. CARES happens to be organized that way, and SMART groups are. RAAS can operate anytime it chooses to. For training exercises, the ARRL's declared one day in October of every year for National Training Day. But local RAAS groups can train anytime they want to, become operational for that. They can also operate during marathons, distance run, that sort of thing. The regatta back before it was killed, as well as during emergencies. becoming a ham operator has never been easier than it is now. Back in the day, anybody that was interested in ham radio trembled in fear at the prospect of having to learn the Morse code and be tested on it. And it used to be that's what you had to do. You don't anymore, except for the highest level test, the highest level class of license. And even that code test is pretty lame. And I will tell you that I don't care to carry on conversations with somebody on Morse code, but in terms of contesting on the air or working a far-flung station in a foreign country, I enjoy Morse code, or as we call it, CW. It's a lot of fun. So is it hard to become a ham here in 2013? Hell, I did it. Can't be that hard. My wife is a ham, my son's a ham, my daughter's a ham. My father's a ham. We offer occasionally crash courses here in our area where we'll take a Saturday morning, get a room full of people, and several of us will take turns reading from the 350 question test pool. Read the question, give you the right answer. You sit there with a highlighter and highlight the right answer. Then you break for lunch, you come back from lunch, take the test. 90% pass rate or better. Works quite well. And that gets you licensed, and then it's incumbent upon you then to familiarize yourself with the way things are really done. Protocol, regulations, da-da-da-da-da-da. But that's where an Elmer can be helpful. An Elmer is very simply a mentor. That's what an Elmer is. And we do have them around here, and I've played that role before too. The local group here in Charleston is the Kanawha Amateur Radio Club. So you folks from Charleston are more than welcome to show up at one of those meetings and express an interest, and you'll be well received. They meet the first Friday of every month. So they met last night at the Ambulance Authority over on Brook Street in the auditorium. So every first Friday of every month, 7 o'clock. I think actually the doors open at 6. They have a social hour. But these folks will help you get your license. As a matter of fact, once a month they do a test session there. So that's the second way you can get a license. You can, I told you it was a 350 question pool. They pull, I think, 50 questions from that pool to do a test. And you can find online sites that will test you, give you a test. So you sit down for 20 minutes every evening and you roll through a test. And once you get to the point where you're passing it more than you're failing it, go take the test. And within a few days, better be careful what I'm saying here. The first license, you have to wait till the license physically arrives in the mail, I believe. Right, ham operators?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So once you upgrade from there, as soon as it shows up on the FCC's website, you can start using those new privileges to operate.
And how long is the crash course or a regular course? I just wondered how long it is.
The crash course?
Yeah.
It's the better part of a day.
Okay.
We start at
a good half day, 3 to 4 hours, or 8 hours.
We'll start at 8 a.m. We'll break for lunch, and usually by 2 o'clock they're given the test. By the way, I meant to say in ham radio, you know, public safety, we're really confined to a small slice of the electromagnetic spectrum. We don't have many choices in frequencies. Ham operators have frequencies that are you would term as shortwave that we use to talk around the world. And then you go on up through the spectrum into frequencies that are comparable to this for local or area communications, and on up to microwave. I know guys that used to go up on the mountaintops, Spruce Knob, high mountaintops like that with parts from an old radar detector and do microwave communication across the miles back and forth to each other. You know, back in the late 70s, that was a hoot to be able to do that. You accomplished something. And then on up to satellites. Hams have their own satellites. Oscar, which is orbiting satellite carrying amateur radio, and a few others. But and my cousin used to spend a lot of time bouncing radio signals off the moon. Yeah, talk around the globe. Loved it. Yes, weather conditions and atmospheric conditions will cause that sort of phenomenon. This time of year, it's not unusual to have a capped atmosphere where you wind up with cooler air at the surface and warmer air aloft. That's called a temperature inversion. And the 911 dispatchers are calling us just raising Cain because somebody's on their channel. Yes. Back in the day, we used to you know, find some old retired guy in town that was, you know, a kindred spirit who would mentor you, bring you along. And now anymore, I mean, but back in the day, people used to build their own equipment too. And with miniaturization, you know, nobody builds stuff anymore, except maybe amplifiers. Yeah, the way to do it now is to get the license, get yourself a radio, get on the air and play. And the quiet zone. I'm sorry?
What does it cost to get a radio?
Well, it depends on what kind of.
Hard to find out too.
It depends on the kind of radio you buy, because you can buy a handheld radio with a couple of amateur bands in it. I know of a Japanese knockoff that you can buy for $60 off of eBay. Or you can buy from Allen, I got a feeling.
So what's the range, like 600 to 200?
Yeah, well, yeah, yeah. I think the last handheld I bought was $350, but that was back in that's a long time ago.
Okay, the license, what is the fee on getting the license?
That's a good question. I think it's $14. I don't think I put it down up here, but if you want to make a note of it, if I can answer any questions for you, if you need any assistance trying to make this happen, my email address is Jeff Clark, one word, at Kanawha, KANAWHA.US.